Was that the high sign? All right. Okay. Hey, everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming. Some of you I've seen time and time again, so I'm glad you've come back. And for the new folks, welcome. We're really glad to have you. So we're going to do a couple things tonight. I'm going to start off with an intro to Angular talk for those of you who are new. And we're going to have a couple of other presentations and show you some variety tonight. We will have time between these sessions, and at the end to answer questions. We really do want to get time for you to ask specific questions. So we're excited for you to come and ask those too. The folks you can ask questions of are Mishko all the way in the back. Hello, raise your hand, Mishko. Brian here in the front. Brian will be giving a talk. Igor in the back, and then Vojta down here. So we're spread throughout the room, so you can, shake our hands and kick us if you need to, whatever needs to happen. I saw a couple folks who are new. This is for you, and the rest of you can feel free to zone out or take a nap or whatever he needs to do. So I want to just do a couple things in this talk and to give you the briefest taste of what Angular is about, and maybe a little bit about why we did this. So we did some web programming, most of us, and we found out that it was hard. Anyone else have that experience? Yes, a couple. Some people think it's easy. Yes? No? Okay. I just didn't see the hands. And in not only just being complex, which makes it hard, it's not very fun. I don't know. So I started early in development, and when I first wrote my first basic application was something like line 10, print, hi there, 20, go to 10. And I was like blown away that it did what I said. It was very fun. And doing stuff in BASIC was really fun, but it couldn't really do too much. And the web lets us do a lot more, but it's way harder. It's way complex compared to that first experience I had writing some Apple II programs. So we think it could be different. And one of the ways that we're attempting to make this simpler is by introducing some structure. So the way we talk about Angular is it's a way to add structure to your apps, and it provides support in terms of a JavaScript library that provides this framework. Now, the structure we've chosen to support is something called MVC, or Model View Controller. Who's heard of MVC? A couple of us? A lot of us. Okay. So the idea behind MVC is that we separate our code into a couple of different responsibilities. One for what we call the model, or the data in our application. One for the view, or what the user sees, the UI. And then something that controls how the UI reacts and how the data flows through it. And this is what we call the controller. So in an Angular app, the model, we use simple just JavaScript objects. And the data resides in those objects for your application. And usually you'll get that data from the server. You'll have some kind of way to communicate, and we've got support for that. But it's just some JavaScript objects, nothing special about them. We create our views out of plain HTML. Hey, what an idea. So instead of having some other templating language to create what the user sees, and usually templates have been rendered on the server, in Angular, everything runs in the client. Everything is client-side. We just talk to the server to get the data that the application needs. And here we can just build our UI out of HTML, plus a little bit of some special stuff that we allow you to extend the syntax of HTML. And we'll talk just a little bit more about that. And then lastly, this controller is JavaScript. You will write the logic, and this is sort of the piece that explains or says how are the models mapped into our UI. We do some of that in the HTML itself, and we'll see some of that. But the controllers also they control this flow between the UI and your model, and they say what happens. So if and this is not the full application, but basically, if I've got a JavaScript object called files with foobar and baz in it, and I set up a view, a piece of HTML that contains a div with some special Angular bits, and we'll talk about those in a minute. We call them directives, where I want to repeat through every file in files, and then in my controller I tell it how to map those files in. Then I can have my app display something like foobar and baz. So another way that we've decided we would like to simplify web application programming is in dealing with the DOM. This ends up being one of the places where you spend most of your time. And to us, it looked like boilerplate, something that could be eliminated, where you usually you set up a way to find an element on the screen in your HTML that you want to talk to. Maybe you'll set an ID on it, and you'll get a handle to it through some sort of like CSS selector, and then you'll want to modify it. You'll also want to listen for events from the user. You'll set up callbacks to tell you, hey, a user clicked on this, or they moved the mouse, or whatever you wanted to find out. This ends up being a huge amount of your code in your application, and we've got some structure that allows you to replace that again with some simplified concepts. We call them data binding and directives, and I'll talk a little bit about them. So data binding allows me to kind of set up my model and my view in the same way that you would use a spreadsheet, where I've got various cells, and if I update one cell, I can refer to it from another cell and say that whenever this updates, we should update this other cell. And this is how data binding works as well. I'll set up my model with the data that I want, and I'll map it into my UI. And I've got an example here where, and this is actually a full piece of code you could run, where I've got a placeholder for your name, where I label it enter your name here. And you notice that in line 10, where we say hello your name, I've got curly braces around that your name text. Now what this means is that for Angular, it means I want to insert some text here from a model element. And in this very simple example, we're setting up the model. Notice on line 8, I've set ng model, and I've set it equal to some text called your name. And what this does is it tells Angular that I'd like to make sure that whenever somebody changes the variable called your name, it updates anywhere in the app that I'm using it. So the effect of this is that for this text input that I've specified in line 8, if I type anything into it, the H1 where it says hello your name will just update with whatever the text is. And we can demo that. Where if I type in the text here, if I type Brad, just updates. Anytime I change it, it updates like that. All right. So the other bit of this is, and we've already seen some directives on that first example where I said ng repeat equals something. This is an example of us extending HTML syntax, and these are what we call directives. Now, the directives allow us to do much more. There are a number of directives that come with Angular out of the box, but we also allow you to write whatever directives you want. So for example, if I wanted to build a nice date picker, or I wanted to reuse some functionality that I've already used in building a date picker, like the one that we see on the right there, normally what I would do is I would build some complex set of divs and spans that represents the structure for my date picker, and I would style it with CSS and whatnot. But this is a little bit messy, and when I come back to read it later, I may have forgotten exactly how I've structured the date picker. It's also hard for other people to read my code. So what we allow you to do is sort of encapsulate this in your own directive, your own sort of HTML extension. You could just call this a date picker. So in your HTML template, you can write angle bracket, date picker, angle bracket. When this code runs, it will expand out into this date picker that we see in the same way that the more verbose code did at the top. So, and then finally for controllers, I said, controllers are just simple JavaScript where we get to associate maybe some model with some UI. And in a very simple example here, again, I'll set up a piece of HTML at the top there where I've got some sort of message. And this is going to refer to a model element named message. And then in my controller, I can simply set up where I can set message to a piece of text, and whatever that text is will appear on the screen. So this is a very brief introduction to the concepts behind Angular. There's a lot more to the set of infrastructure we've provided. We've tried to create a very complete ecosystem for the core components in building an application. Now, if you are new to Angular, I did just want to take you through some of the pieces that we provide to get you going. So the first place, I think most of you have seen the front page. Anyone not? You just came because you heard it was cool? Okay, I'll see you on the front page. So the front page takes you through a bunch of like simple examples to get you going. If you are learning Angular for the first time, we have a YouTube channel with a lot of great videos about how to write code, how to structure your apps. All of the meetups that we have here, we put on this YouTube channel as well, and you can get that from the Angular homepage. If you want to know which applications have been built with Angular, there's a ton of them. And if you've got one that you'd like to have featured here, please send it to us. We'd love to highlight it for you guys. You can just browse through. There's a nifty, actually Brian built this app. There's a nifty sort of tag sorter, so I can say, hey, I'd like to find all of the apps that support animations. And you can flip through them and see which ones do. We also have, to get you going, after you've gone through some of the basics, read through some of the docs, there's a tutorial that will take you through all of the basic concepts in Angular, all the way through to talking to a server, writing tests, structuring your code. To get a full, deep understanding, we also have a set of what we call developer documentation. And in this conceptual overview, we take you through from all the components of Angular, how we do model view controller, how we do data binding. We cover all of these things in the concepts. There's a set of API docs. We've got a blog, which is the right place to look for updates, announcements, where we're going to be, when we're going to do releases, all those sort of things. And then if you have questions, we'd love to answer them. We've got a really vibrant community out on Google Groups. So thanks for listening. Does anyone have initial questions about any of that? Otherwise, I'll introduce Brian here. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we don't have good point. So the question was, how do we do animations in Angular? And we don't have specific supports, although this is one of our targets in an upcoming release, specific supports for animations. But doing just general CSS animations is one of the is the way that we do it. We've got several examples. As a matter of fact, I wrote which one here? This kind of nifty little game that will shows you basically how to integrate Angular with animations and how to synchronize events with triggering animations and whatnot. So we have a number of folks who do mobile applications in Angular, and while we don't come with anything out of the box for mobile elements, there are integrations between Sencha Touch and jQuery Mobile that people have built Angular linkages. Any other early questions? Okay, well, I'm going to let Brian come up and going to take you through the main presentation tonight.
All right, cool. So tonight I'm going to be talking about Yeoman. So who here has heard of Yeoman? Have any of you used it, tried it out? Any thoughts on it? Raise your hand. All right. Well, I've been working lately on adding specific support for AngularJS stuff in Yeoman. So tonight I hope to show you some of that cool stuff. If you're familiar with some of these things like Angular Seed, it should be very familiar. But first, what exactly is Yeoman? So it's really a suite of tools that just take all of these kind of painful these pain points in developing a web app and just kind of handle all that stuff for you. So one of the big things is when you're starting an app, you have to bring in all of these different assets. Sometimes you have to configure them so that way they work nice together. Another thing is then when you go to deploy, a lot of us are using CoffeeScript, Sass, all of these other like compiled languages that need to become CSS, JavaScript. They need to be minified. They need to do these sort of things. So that's another thing where Yeoman really helps. But one of the cool things about Yeoman is it takes it a step further, and besides just setting up your initial project, it helps you, say, in the case of Angular, for instance, it'll help stub out controllers. It'll hook up routes. It'll configure things, so you can really get rolling fast with your application. And I've seen that there was a lot of interest in kind of extending these different seeds. I wrote one for Express that a lot of people started using, and there were people that took mine and they added Bootstrap on top of it, or they added a few things that they did. And one of the cool things about Yeoman is it kind of lets you get the best of both worlds. So you can really quickly get into your app, but you can also kind of cherry pick the different things that you want to use or that you don't want to use. So with that, let me clean something up here really quickly. So tonight we're going to do something really truly groundbreaking in that we're not going to use a to-do list as the demo application. This is a first for all of us, and it's all right. So I'm gonna make like a simple kind of shopping site, like kind of think maybe Amazon, one of those kind of things. So you've got a listing of these different items. You can choose different things, add them to a cart, and then at the end it has a little table that shows you how much money you're spending. So to start out here, I'm in a blank directory. I'm just gonna yeoman init Angular, right? And so hit enter, and you get this cute little ASCII art, and it asks you, do you want to use Twitter Bootstrap? And I like Bootstrap, sure. And if so, do you want to use it with Compass as opposed to vanilla CSS? This is Compass Sass. So are you guys familiar with that? It's pretty similar to like Less or all these other ones. I'm gonna say yes because I like it personally. Bigger fonts, sure. All right, you guys see? All right, cool. Okay, so do I need to make any changes? Nope. Okay, so that just whizzed by and it created a bunch of different files for me. Most of them are the Bootstrap, the individual files for the Bootstrap, and this seems kind of crazy, but it's awesome because now you can really easily cherry pick which of these different features of Bootstrap that you want and really reduce the size of your CSS payload. Down here you'll see we're starting to actually generate, here's stuff for our application. So here's AngularJS, we've got the shims in here, we've got a CSS file of simple view, and below that we have app.js, that's kind of your main file, index, that's what includes all of your scripts, a controller, and you'll notice as well it also generated a specification. So one of the other cool things about the AngularJS support for Yeoman is it really encourages you to test. So it'll, every time you make a controller or a service or something that you can reasonably test, it'll say, hey, here's your empty test file. All you got to do is go write some assertions, and so that's really cool. It also creates a testacular config file, and it also hooks up Yeoman to use testacular to run the tests, because that's what we like to use here. Alright, so now with all of that set up, on the bottom here, I don't know if you guys can see, I'm opening up another pane so that way I can do two things at once. Alright, this is cut off. Alright, well, you'll have to trust me. I'm going to run Yeoman server. Alright, that's not good. Such file or directory. All right. Okay. I don't know what went on there, but anyway. Okay. Cool. So it compiled all of our stuff together, and it opens up the app right here. But that's not the only thing that it does. It actually will watch your app for changes, and so you can really easily just, you know, can make some change, save, and it refreshes. Hi guys. I don't know if you can see that. All right. But how would we use this to actually write an app? So that's the next thing that we're going to tackle. So first, I'm gonna kill this really quickly. So first, I'm gonna make a service that kind of represents our catalog. So to do that, we write Yeoman init Angular. This is really verbose. This is one of the things we want to work on. Service. And the name of the service is going to be catalog. And this is going to be a value service, which just means it's a very simple service. Just has it's just going to have a static array in there. In an actual application, you might want to make some HTTP request or do something else. But for the sake of brevity, we're just going to do that. All right, so if we go into our scripts here, we'll font up. All right, sorry guys. Okay, so if you notice down here, this is our index file. This is index.html. It included here scripts, services, catalog, and here it has this this special. I don't even know what to call this. This is a wrapper for Yeoman, so it knows to minify and concatenate these scripts together during the build process. And here's our catalog. All right. So that's not especially interesting. I have a pre-made catalog here on GitHub. For us to use. So let me just copy that. All right. And now let's go to our controller and actually use this instead of this list of awesome things. We're gonna ask for a catalog. And we'll just do this for now. I'm going to go back and refactor this, that way these names make sense. But just to show that this actually works, I need to restart my server. Here, let's exit. I don't know. That was just a weird. I don't know, bug of some sort. I think it's because I deleted the directory and then made a new one in its place, and it was trying to watch or something like that. But typically you wouldn't run into something like that. From here on out, I should be able to work without having to restart that server. So anyway, there are a lot of little kinks in here, so bear with me. It would be great to have everyone trying this out, reporting these things, so we can continuously improve it. There's a lot of ideas that we have for features. But we're also very curious to hear things like, what do you guys want? What are your pain points? So think about those sort of things. Think about how, what kind of things do you want generated? Think about, what are things that I just see myself doing over and over again? And, obviously participate on GitHub, let me know. And if you do that, you will get an Angular shirt. That's your prize for that. So. These are much cherished, so that should be a good enough motivation. Besides, the furtherment of humankind and all of that. Okay. So let's see here. So we don't see anything in here, but that's probably because our catalog has these different fields in here, and our view isn't updated to make sense of that. So let's do thing.name. Nope. Let's do our catalog. Call it item in catalog. Do item dot name. What's going on here? Alright. Unexpected token in catalog. Guessing my copy paste failed. Yep, there we go. That'll do it. There we go. Okay. So now you see, instead of listing that hard-coded thing, it's bringing in the catalog service and using that instead. But this doesn't really look very much like a shopping cart application should. So let me go back to my gists, and I'm just gonna copy in some Twitter Bootstrap stuff to make this look more sensible. So this is just like a header and some of that type of thing. Alright, cool. So we've got a basket count there that's not implemented. Just grab that out of there for now. We'll return back to it later. Okay. Cool, you can buy things, but not really. And where did our listing go? Okay, that also doesn't exist yet. That makes sense. Alright. Okay, so got this. Let's make these actually look like we'd expect them to look on some shopping website. So, Bootstrap gives us nice utility classes like for this style equals unstyled or something like that. There we go. And we also, besides just the name of the thing, it has a price. So item.price. And you see every time we're doing this, it updates. Let's use a filter on that. Let's use the currency filter. That makes sense. There we go. Cool. And we can wrap this in maybe a level 3 heading. And if memory recalls, there's also an image for these things. So item.image. This is a pretty awesome store, I think. Let's restrict the width on that. Okay. So already you can see we've got quite a bit of stuff right out of the box here. I didn't have to go hunt down stuff on GitHub, download a bunch of files, extract them, move them around, do all of this. The application's already nicely structured, and some of these kind of annoying little decisions about, oh, how do I structure my scripts, how do I do these, are already kind of taken care of you. And they continue to be maintained when you use Yeoman to generate all these different things. Alright, so let's go back over here. I'm going to try this one more time. Okay, so we're going to... You see that? Alright? Okay. So we're going to try... we're going to try overriding the service, and this is one of the cool things I think about Yeoman. So for instance, here, let's see what happens if I try and generate another catalog. So it tells me that, nope, you have a conflict there. So you can actually look at the diff right here in console. This is a really cool feature. I think it just landed recently. So it's saying it's going to clobber my shopping list and replace it with this. So no, I don't want to do that. But what I do want to do is I want to add another route now for like a checkout area. So you can individually generate views and controllers with Yeoman, but one of the cool things that we have is this notion of just generating the entire route, which means you get the controller, you get the view, and it configures your route provider to use both of those in kind of the typical fashion. Obviously, if you need parameters and stuff, you can go in and add those later, but I think it's a pretty cool feature. So we're going to call this checkout. Off the screen. Ah, jeez. Okay. Well, I'll execute the command and then I'll scroll back so you guys can see. Okay. So you get the gist of it. It created a checkout.js and controllers. It created the spec, and you can see the checkout.html it created as a view, and that's all it did. Okay, so that doesn't really change what our app is here, but if we go click on our checkout link here, you see this is the checkout view. All right, so that's pretty cool. Let's also add another service. This one is going to keep track of which items are in our basket. So we're going to create a service, and we're going to call it basket. And you guys can't see this because it's off the screen. All right. So let's implement our basket really quickly and then kind of tie all of this together and see how that looks. So in our services, here's our basket. We've got a really clever API here that returns the meaning of life, but we're going to overwrite that with our own logic now. So we'll call this basket. This is going to be a local representation. We'll have kind of getter and setter kind of things. So if you want to get this, it's just going to return the basket. If you want to add an item, such as one that we defined, that's not supposed to be a factory, such as one that we have in our catalog, we'll take an item, and if the basket has something with the same ID as that item, then we are going to increment the quantity of that item by 1. And otherwise, if there's nothing in the basket, then we're going to, oops. We're going to create it and set its quantity to 1. So it's going to look like this. The type of the item will be equal to a reference to the item in our catalog, and the quantity will be 1. Alright, how does that look? So far so good? Alright, again, this will keep refreshing every time, but I'm not really doing anything new. Okay, so to remove the item, we just delete it out of that. We just delete it out of the object that we have here. So delete basket item.id. Okay. So let's make it so you can actually add things into this basket. So back in our controller, our main controller, we should ask for a basket, and let's just expose it right on the scope. Scope basket equals basket. Okay, so with that in mind, we can go back to our view for main, and we can add a nice button. Let's give it a BTN primary. That should be the nice blue button, I think. Bye. Cool. So it doesn't do anything yet, but it will soon. So let's add an ng click that be, I'm going to call this basket, add whatever the item is. Okay. So presumably this is working. But let's implement this checkout view over here so we can actually see what's in our basket. So this is the checkout view. Yep, that it is. So we're gonna have another unstyled list. Actually, let's make this a table. I like that idea better. Okay. It's a table, so we'll make the head first. What do we want to do? Maybe item, name, price. Quantity. Let's navigate over here so we can actually see these things updated in real time. And then let's do let's repeat over this item in basket, and let's get the item.type.name, and the price, and we'll use the currency filter. So let's see if this is working. One of the things is, right now, all of the stuff that I've written is just right in memory. So every time it refreshes, you get kind of a clean slate. So let's see. I'm not seeing anything. Why is that? Item, quantity. Okay. So try to buy something, and it's not in checkout. And I don't have my battering either, so I can't easily debug this. Okay. Well, let's add a title here, and I'm just going to keep thinking about what exactly went wrong there. So I should write a test. That's a good idea. Who said that? That guy gets a t-shirt, I think. So the issue is, actually, I just realized that I'm not getting the basket. So go back to our catalog, add an item, go to checkout. Oh, no, still not there. Okay. Yep, you're right. We're gonna write a test. Okay. So we load. Let's look at our basket. All right. So we load the shopping app module, and then we inject the basket, and we should be able to do these assertions. So it should initially be empty. Basket get to be get.length, maybe, to be true. No, let's expect that to be 0. Okay. So now we can do testing. So Yeoman test. Again, this is just piping it right back into Testacular. It's being very slow for some reason, but hopefully that's because it's finding all of my bugs. This is actually using, or it should be using, Phantom. Yeah, that's how I've configured to do it by default. But you're right. Let's see what it looks like if we go into our where's our Testacular config? There it is. Okay, so let's do Chrome instead. There we go. Okay, cool. So it actually crashed. that's good if this tells me expected undefined to be 0, so we're not returning anything in Git. Return basket. There you go. That was it. Glad someone's paying attention. Okay. So it should, Alright, so we have to write our own length. So let's do a count to be 0. And what does this look like? So, yeah, we could enumerate over object keys, but I have a different solution in mind for that. So we're gonna just keep track of a count. And whenever you add an item successfully, we're going to just increment that count. And whenever you delete an item, we're going to... we're going to do that. Okay. So hopefully that'll at least yield a test that is testable. I still have to expose the count. Oh yes, good call. That's also an approach, but there's a reason I'm doing it this way. Where is it? Okay. Is our test still checking no? Oh, I got it. I got my parentheses in order. So it's swiping back and forth because it's popping up a Chrome really quickly. Okay. So it doesn't see its controller's main on line 20. That's interesting. Controller's main on line 20. What's going on there? Oh, okay. So we're actually failing a test that expected our awesome things to have this length. That's interesting. Okay. I'm going to comment that out for now. Okay, there we go. Now we get success. All right. Yeah, that was a red herring. Okay. So that doesn't... Yeah, you can. Sure. Let's see. Where is my test? So my test for basket. If we just want to run this one, you can do it. And we can run this again. We'll do the back and forth. You can check. Yes. So there, you see it only ran one and skipped the other three, and that one passed. So, not yet. Is that something that you think is a good idea? Possibly. What do you guys think? Do you guys like you guys who are using Testacular, do you use like the IE, the IIT or the ddefine, or is... Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. So. So you think in Testacular maybe this is a thing? All right. Someone GitHub issue right now. Okay. So you still have yet to see this work correctly. Let's see if anything that I did there made any difference. Nope. All right. We're going to go grab Chrome Store. What was that? Probably not. But that's what I'm going to see right now. I'm going to grab the Batarang extension. Let's install that. So, what's going on here? So this has a list of awesome things, and now it's clear why this doesn't work. The answer is that I didn't ever expose this on my scope. Okay. So eventually I would have caught that if I wrote the unit tests for checkout control, but I'm apparently being impatient today. So let's just expose the basket, and hopefully when we add an item, there we go. Now we actually see it. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So let's make this look nice though. We can go back to, geez, it's so hard to work with this resolution. You develop on like a 30-inch monitor for a while, and then you present on this thing, and that's like major headache. Yeah, if someone wants to invent like a super high resolution monitor, I will buy like 10. It's a good startup idea. Okay, so let's make this table look nice. So I think it's class table. It's very fitting. That's pretty looking. Doesn't have anything in it yet. Let's maybe conditionally hide this. So ng show, we only want to be showing this when basket.count is greater than 0. So let's close that up. And maybe otherwise we show a nice message like, hey, you gotta buy something or get out. So let's just do when it's equal 0. No items in basket. There we go. So now we have a nice message there, so our user isn't too confused, hopefully. So let's go back over to the cart. We've got this kind of primitive looking thing here, but let's say we want to group all of this item together into a directive. So there's a generator for that as well. And it's aptly named Angular directive. Yeah, I'll do that. There we go. Alright, sorry about that. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, so we'll call this maybe product. And let's go move all of this stuff right here into its own directive. Do we want a buy button in there? We can put we'll leave the buy button out of there. So let's put that into a template. Okay. And that looks pretty good to me, except we need to expose on the scope an item. And we don't need this link function. Okay. So then we can go back to our main view, and we'll use product here instead. Item equals item. Alright, and that seems like it's still working. See it? There we go. So we can see that we now have this item. Can you see that? So it looks the same, but we do in fact have that item directive there. So this works. We can click on these different things, but it would be really nice if we actually had some feedback. So maybe we'll put something up here that shows us how many items are in there. So let's go back to our index.html, and we need another we need another controller in here to show us how many items are there. So I'm just gonna add it in here. ng controller equals, we'll call this nav ctrl. Now over here it refreshed and it doesn't actually have that yet, but I can use Yeoman to generate just the controller. So there's no route for this. It's just the controller, and there we go. So that looks nice again. Let's expose what we need to on nav, and then just put the count right in there. So we want to expose the basket again. Sorry, what was that? It's overriding nav. This? Oh, you got it? Alright. Alright, no worries. Thanks. If you guys have questions, feel free to chime in. Okay, so let's go back then to our main. Oops, back to our index rather. And up here in checkout, we want to show the number of items that we have. So is basket.count. There we go. So we have 0. Click on a few things, and now we have that. All right. So let's finish up this checkout page. We probably want like a total here and maybe a total column in there. So I'm just going to close all these because I can't read them anymore. So back in checkout, let's do item quantity. We'll do subtotal and item.quantity times item price. Type.price rather. And we'll use currency. So that looks nice. This is one of the tedious things. If we had a persistent data store, this wouldn't be an issue. But so there, we've got the subtotal in there. Let's add something to our checkout controller that can sum this up. So call it scope.total maybe. It's a function of there's a nice Angular utility that'll let you do for each over the object without having to think too hard. So basket. We need to keep track of a running total, so I'm not very inventive with variable names today. So we want the item type price times the item quantity. And we want to put that maybe down here at the bottom. It's just total. Maybe we want to make this bold. Okay, so let's try that. Ooh, not working again. Alright, so this is going to be a race now. Let's see who can figure out what my mistake was. I didn't return the total. There we go. Who said that? Excellent. I didn't use coffee scripts. Oh. I actually learned CoffeeScript just that way I could have Yeoman generate CoffeeScript. So, for instance, now if you wanted to have, I'm not going to do this, but coffee thing. If you wanted to do this, it'll actually generate CoffeeScript for you as well. and then it'll compile all of this. As you notice down here, it's compiling it, or maybe failing to compile it or something. But anyway, in theory it works. Okay, so now that we're returning, let's see. Oh man, what's going on there? So we return our total. Let's get the battering up. Oh, or maybe just the console will tell me what's wrong. Failed to load resource. Oh, it doesn't like this coffee script thing. Sorry, coffee script guys. That was probably my bad, not coffee script's bad. Price of undefined. Checkout line 8. Price of undefined. Yeah, basket, we have to do basket get. There we go. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys for helping me out there. I'm glad that you're all paying such close attention. Okay. So that's the basics of it, and you even got to see me do some ad hoc testing to try and figure out where I messed up. Do you guys have any questions so far? What do you think? Yay, nay? Would you use something like this? It's cool? Yeah, question in the back? Right, so the question was if you had something kind of in this checkout stage that let you, add a gift card, you could really easily update it. You could just apply it right there. Yeah, that's definitely the case. Do you want me to write something like that? Yeah, you want me to write it? Yeah, sure, I'll do that, but your question? Yeah, sure, so you want to add for... Oh, right, the question. Sorry, the question is, how easy is it to add support to Yeoman for some other library or add some new features to it? The answer is it's actually pretty easy. Yeoman builds upon Grunt, which is another pretty popular build tool, and it combines a couple modules of Grunt, and it also it adds a bunch of other custom things. But if you check out the Yeoman API, they've got some guides in there for doing it. Do you want to see what the code looks like real quick? Can I find my own code? This isn't actually my computer, so it's hard to figure out where things are. Yeah, let's look at the generator code really quickly here. So if you want to add your own library here, we've got, I don't know if you guys can see it that well, there's Angular, Backbone, Chrome App, Ember, Jasmine, Mocha, Testacular, Yeoman. So let's just take a look here at, for instance, like our controller generator, right? So this this gets a name from its like inherited class, basically, and it makes sure that you don't have controller already on the end, otherwise it strips it off. And then here it just copies these template files, and this is just really smart, and it knows what its own name is, and so it'll fill in the different gaps. And I think I can just pull up right here really quickly. So I've got it. There's a set of CoffeeScript kind of templates and JavaScript templates, and so in order to write a controller, you give it I don't know what style this is. Is this EJS or one of these? Anyways, it's just a, sorry, someone know? Herb. All right. So yeah, herb style string interpolation here, and it just uses the properties of the generator, most of which Yeoman just kind of gives for you out of the box. Like it'll parse out the command arguments and do all of these sort of things. You can customize the different arguments, so it's pretty easy. Like if you had some pattern that you used for building services, for instance, and you wanted to make it really easy to do that, you could easily add it yourself. It'd be no big deal. And then you could send a pull request, and I'd be like, that's awesome. And then you'd be internet famous. So you should do that. And you'd probably get a t-shirt for that. So there's all sorts of
Is there a way to get, oh, sorry, is there a way to get Yeoman to tell you, like what Angular, what you can do from the command line for Angular?
That's a good question. Yes, but I think it's kind of broken right now. So you can do --help, and I think that this just lists what like the Angular init is. Oh, here it has some of these things, but it's not actually parsing all of them. This is a non-exhaustive list. I'm not sure why it's non-exhaustive, but anyway, I have a write-up on my blog. It's briantford.com about all of the different things. I imagine that very shortly that particular issue will be fixed. And in fact, someone in the audience on your laptop, you want to like file a GitHub issue right now, work on it tonight even. So that, yeah, that type of functionality will be there. And I don't know why it is. I think it's the way that Yeoman is generating that list right now is it just looks at kind of the top level generator when you do Yeoman init Angular, and it just grabs all of the ones that use there. But by default, I'm not making any services. I'm not using all of the different options. So it's, yeah, that's a good point though. That would be an excellent feature. All right, and let's see. You wanted to see if I were to, yeah, like a code or something. Ah, I see. So how would I do something like that? Yeah. Oh, repeat the question. Thank you. Okay. So he said, you know, what if you had an app where you put in some gift card amount and you wanted it to decrease over time? So I'm not actually going to write all the code. I thought it was like an at checkout time. He wanted me to have like a code, you know, one of these like put in your gift card code kind of things, which is easier to implement. But something like that, I would maybe create another service, and then every time you're withdrawing from it, you know, you're calling some function, and it'll only, you know, it only does the transaction if you actually have balance left. And you can, you know, you can hook it up. You can write this service that way it'll communicate back and forth with your server, and so you know, you can do all sorts of crazy things. But tonight I just wanted to show some of like the basic features of Yeoman. Show how it relates to Angular, and hopefully, you know, spark your guys' imagination, and we can add some other cool features to it as well. How do you install a new version of Angular? So, I think some of the guys at Twitter that work on Bootstrap recently released this tool called Bower that also is kind of subsumed by Yeoman, and right now we don't have, like, it's not integrated fully yet, but what it'll look like very soon is you'll just Yeoman install, for instance, Angular. You can do it right now, but it doesn't wire everything up correctly for you like it should. So cool. So it grabbed Angular, and I think it makes like a components file here. And then what you'll do when you want to update it is it'll Yeoman update Angular, update, upgrade, something like that. Fatal. Okay. So I guess that means that we have the newest or something. Yeah, a lot of this stuff is really like bleeding edge, and you have to npm install at latest and do these things. But this is why we want to get feedback. You know, I really be interested to hear from you guys. Like, what sort of things have you automated? What's your build process like? You know, when you set up a project, what are your tools of choice? These are the kind of things that I'd like to know more about. Because obviously I have my tools, but we want to make this thing really awesome, and we want to make sure that Angular is able to integrate with all these different libraries really seamlessly. And hopefully this will be kind of the catch-all for these different seed projects. So, you know, we don't have to have every permutation of every JavaScript library ever, and every CSS skeleton library and all of these things. Instead, you should just be able to pick these things and then run the generators, and everything kind of just works really great together. But we're not quite there yet, as you saw me stumble. Anything else, guys?
So do you guys have any suggestions? Anything that you use every day but you haven't seen today, and you would like it to be part of it on Yeoman?
It'd be really cool if Yeoman could do something with modules, and sort of recommending how to lay out modules in an app.
Right, that's a very good point. Right now, so to be honest, I spend a lot of my time building tools for Angular, and not quite as much time using Angular to build, huge scale applications. So actually, I imagine many of you guys in the audience actually have valuable experiences that, I would love to hear about. I'd love to hear about what your strategies are for different modules. Right now, what I would recommend if you're using Yeoman is you would in your, gosh, that's the wrong thing entirely. All right, in your app.js, I would just define all of your modules there, and then I guess one of the advantages of splitting things in modules is when it comes time to test, you can reduce the amount of things loaded. So I would group together things that kind of visually go together, or they're on the same page, or you would want to cluster them into a test. Some things that we've been looking at are, do we want lazy loading modules? Do we want to integrate with require.js or ES6 modules, or these sort of things? And there's just like an explosion of options in that space, and so it's really hard to kind of nail down, what does everyone want? What's the best solution? What's the generic solution that gets that just is wins across the board for everyone? So again, that's a very good point. Yeah, we definitely right now there's no generator, there's no anything besides here's your default module, here's your application level module, and if you want to add your own things, you kind of have to maintain that all on your own. But yeah, again, let me know what you guys are doing. Let me know how you think it should work, and hopefully we can come up with an awesome solution. All right, so the comment was it would be nice to support minifier and obfuscator. So you're right. At the moment, I think that all that this does in the build step, I've been away from this. I actually just merged a ton of changes, so I'm a little bit behind. I believe that all that we're doing is concatenating together all of the files. But yes, minification definitely coming soon. Angular has a few special considerations in that if you use, you have to use the long array form annotation. And something that I'm looking into now is something that takes the short form and just automatically produces the longer annotations before sending it off to the compiler, so that way you don't have to do all of that yourself. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like when you write, oh, okay, here. So here's an example of the long form where we've got the array. This is the string here, so that way this doesn't get minified out. And then over, if I can find controller somewhere, over here we've got this short form. So really, a much better solution, I think, would be less typing for the user, but still super minifier friendly. So that's something that I think is cool. What do you guys think about that? Good idea, bad idea, do it, great idea, should be done yesterday, that kind of thing? All right. Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, you don't want one giant file, right? Yeah, so there's a lot of different strategies that people are taking. Like some people want to lazy load files, and there's also this entire additional problem of how do you deal with third-party libraries that are using different wrappers. And so it's very complicated, and I want to make sure that the things that or the tools that we're building around Angular are awesome and work well with all of the sorts of tools that are, people that come to our meetups and use our library and participate in all of this are, really excited about.
You should also get the build option to follow the migration thing. An option so we can actually change the file name, the date or something.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. So right now, Yeoman actually already does that. It already versions the file names for you. It does that when it concatenates them, and then it minifies it, and I think it preserves it at that step. But anyway, I know that's something that's, you don't have to define it on a per framework level in Yeoman. Yeoman just kind of takes care of that. But yes, that's very good. Yeoman also does some cool stuff, like it generates app caches. I only just barely scratched the surface on some of the different cool things that Yeoman can do for you. So I would urge you guys to check it out. I would urge you to also file issues. If something's crashing, something's not working right, you don't like how something works, you have an awesome idea, like all those things. Please just right now is really when we want to collect feedback on this. So I can't urge you guys enough. So what's the relationship between Google and Yeoman? Is that a Brad question? All right, sorry. I don't know what's going on now. Yes, just repeat the question. All right, anyway, what's the relationship between Google and Yeoman? So Yeoman is totally open source. It's all on GitHub. It's all developed there. If I understand correctly, it's a project started by, I think, Paul Irish and Eddie Osmani and some of the Chrome developer relationship guys. But I know that there's a lot of people outside of Google, a lot of these big open source. What's the guy's name? Anyway, there's a lot of open source involvement too. And if you have some library or some feature that you want to add, just get involved. It's pretty straightforward. Again, it builds upon tools like Grunt, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. You guys know Grunt? Grunt? All right, cool. Yeah, so it should be pretty familiar if you're using Grunt, if you're using these seed projects. I don't know. Is there anything that you have in mind? You excited to contribute some awesome feature?
Our company is using JavaScript MVC, so I don't see any JavaScript MVC on the Yeoman thing. So just curious about it.
I see. All right. Yep. That's all I got on that. Anyone else?
So maybe you can switch to Angular.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, my performance on the tools tonight probably didn't entice anyone looking to switch, but it's getting there. And I think that it says a lot that we're really trying to create these kind of tools. I mean, it's really a difficult space. It doesn't take a lot to combine Angular and Bootstrap, but it takes a lot when you scale up to like n different libraries, and there's all these different ways that things can intersect. And that's again why you see all of these different things breaking, because every day we're finding some new and better way to do something, and every day it's breaking my generators and my build and stuff. So I'm always playing catch up.
Yeah, I had a general sort of Angular question, which may be solved by a Yeoman feature.
Sure, I'd love to hear
which
it.
is handling localization and globalization in Angular, what the best practice is. It seems like you either get clobbered up front by loading a big file, or it's a death by 1,000 cuts as you go back and try and load up resources for each little thing. So maybe adding a compilation step in that allowed you to load in a globalization or localization file.
Yes, that's a very good point. And again, that's not something that I specifically have a ton of experience with, but do one of you guys know? I know we have a service that that helps with localization, but again, I haven't specifically used it.
So I think I can answer some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's.
We support, I guess, localization is the word. In other words, if you're in different locale, you want to format the strings differently, the numbers differently, currency differently, and so on. We also have this pluralization directive, which allows you to deal with things, like one file but two files, or zero files. But when it comes to translation, you're essentially on your own, and that means that you have to actually produce different versions of the template. So you would have the same template would have to get fed through some kind of a translator, so that you would have it in different languages. Yes.
So, is
So
that
microphone.
the
We have a question from
consensus?
Seattle if no one's talking.
Yeah, sorry. So, Vojta chimed in and said that he also thinks that that's something that should be done on the server side. Combining together these localization resources. So is that the general consensus? I mean, I don't foresee a lot of situations where you would have to display something in Chinese and then switch to Spanish like midway through. Typically, your users are like pretty deterministic in what language they want to see.
I'm going to cut Brian off. But
Sure.
Let's thank him for the presentation tonight.
Do we have time for one more question from Seattle?
We did have another presenter, but he has not shown up tonight. So we're going to be here to answer any questions you guys might have. So please come down, chat with us, and we'd love to hear other thoughts and have discussions with you guys. Thanks for coming.